It's Monday night, and you know what that means. Jersey First TV proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit Online magazine for 2020, 2021, and now in 2022, as well as being the Garden State's most beloved and factually accurate political commentator. Yes, it's me, ladies and gentlemen, Fernando Uribe. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Pretty sweltering weather, to say the least, and I hope you all stayed cool, looked after your pets, elderly neighbors, got to spend time with family and friends, whatever. But again, the most important thing was you staying hydrated during these hot days in July. Hopefully, we're seeing some cooler days ahead here as we begin the week. Hope, again, shout out to all my fellow Yankee fans as our first place New York Yankees took 2 out of 3 in Baltimore, still staying in first place and cruising along to hopefully what will be another American League Eastern Division Championship, maybe some big games in October, to say the least. But more importantly, folks, last night, I hope for all of you nerds like myself, you got to enjoy Shark Week, because I sure did. And let me have a little tea here, because yes, I'm a nerd. I love Shark Week. I love learning about great whites, hammerhead sharks, and everything else in the shark kingdom. Again, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson being the master of ceremonies, watching Jackass 2.0 on Shark Week last night. A lot of great programming this evening, certainly. And again, even for my fellow pro wrestling fans, tonight, the flagship show for the World Wrestling Entertainment Company, WWE, sort of hitting a new era now without Vince McMahon. We'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show with my guest tonight. And certainly, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so here on Facebook Live via StreamYard, and also on the Jersey First TV YouTube page. Make sure you always like Jersey First on Facebook. Of course, follow them on both Instagram and Twitter. And certainly check out their website, www.jerseyfirst.org. That's Jersey, the number 1, st.org. Special programming note later on this week. It's my privilege to be joining my Jersey First TV teammate, the great Elizabeth Nader, as I'll be her guest this week on the Nader Narrative. So I'm really excited about that. If you don't watch the Nader Narrative, ladies and gentlemen, on the Jersey First TV YouTube page or on their Facebook page, I don't know what you're waiting for. Exceptional journalism, great guests, great interviews. You don't want to miss that. And I feel so super privileged to be on her show this week as a guest. I'll actually be the one being interviewed instead of me always interviewing people. So I'm looking forward to that. Folks, sharing is caring. If you're tuning in right now live on your smartphone, your Mac, PC, tablet, wherever, just click the share button and do that. It'll appear on your social media right now. And certainly I appreciate all of my excellent viewers. And of course, the most intelligent audience anywhere in New Jersey media is always here every Monday night live at 6 p.m. Eastern. Folks, stay tuned, because at the end of the show, I will have this week's winner of the worst journalist here in the state of New Jersey. It's actually multiple winners this week. And also, I have something to say to Insider NJ's Jay Lassiter. Yeah, I got something to say to you, Jay, because I've been waiting a whole week to get this off my chest. And believe me, folks, if you dislike Jay Lassiter as much as I do, you definitely want to tune in for this at the end of the program. But first, again, joining me this week, again, is one of the reasons that this show continues to do well every single week with traffic, not with a few dozen views, not with a couple hundred views. No, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about thousands and thousands of views. You don't believe me? Check out the Facebook page, check out the YouTube. It's all there, folks. It's not being braggadocious if you can back it up. And I do that every single week here on the show. But the other reason, too, again, aside from having a wonderful audience, is because of the outstanding guests that I bring you every single week, and the exclusives you don't see anywhere else in New Jersey media. And this week is no different. Joining me this week here is the distinguished mayor of the borough of Butler, New Jersey, a fellow Hispanic conservative, and also a dedicated pro wrestling fan. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. He is Ryan Martinez, joining us live here on Real Talk. Mr. Mayor, how are you?
I'm doing great. I hope I live up to that intro you just gave me.
Hey, listen, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate you coming on here, and we definitely have a lot to talk about. First and foremost, certainly you are one of the few Republican mayors, I would say, in northern Jersey. Obviously, we know Morris County is west of where I am in Hudson County. But you are a guy that has really come on the scene. You and the town council in the borough of Butler have been working diligently, during this pandemic, after the pandemic. You've been a what I would argue, a breath of fresh air in the northern part of New Jersey, especially in your borough. And quite frankly, what got you into politics?
I've always had like a periphery like of politics. As a small kid, I still remember one of the first books that I got from my troll book house at 5 years old was a book about the 40 presidents. And I read that book backwards and forwards. And I thought when I was a small child, I was going to become president of the United States. I was going to be in the updated version of that book. I got a little older and I was like, not realistic. I'll just be a lawyer and, have a family, what have you. Then just little by little, I just got tired of what I was seeing on TV. There was nothing that was speaking to me. There was a lot of complaints. I'm like, well, maybe I should do something about it. I ran for Congress in 2018 as a libertarian candidate. As we both know, libertarians really don't get much play in the media or in TV or what have you. But I got some eyes on me. And people started approaching me and they say, if you came over to the Republican Party, you'd probably be able to get something done. Well, cut to 2 years later, I started getting involved locally. Our mayor has to resign in the middle of his term, and they were looking for someone to appoint, and they appointed me.
Okay, now with appointing you, what does that entail in the sense of when is the term over and when are you running for re-election?
So that was November 2020. The mayor had 2 years left on his term. So the following year, you have to run in a special election to finish out his term, which was only one more year. So I had to run last year to finish out his term, and now I'm running again for a 4-year term. I'm running with Alex Calvi and Brittany Morley, who are running for council. And luckily, we were in primary. Then we also have no opposition on the other side. So things are looking good.
Is it safe to say that Butler is maybe one of the few rare red townships in that, well, not in Morris County. We know Morris County has a lot of red townships, but we're learning that Morris is not becoming blue, but it's kind of becoming purplish in a lot of areas. That doesn't seem to be the case in Butler. Is that fair to say?
No, I would say it's almost 2-1 in Butler. I would say I'm estimating, I think it's about maybe 1,500 Republicans, about 800 Democrats, but there's a lot of independents. It's over 2,000. They outnumber us almost completely. But what I think I've been able to do successfully was I make a lot of inroads with not only Democrats but also independents. I think my beliefs are something that not too many people can argue with because I'm not really extreme on either side. I don't think the government should be doing a whole hell of a lot. I think people should make their own decisions, chart their own course. The government's just there to do things that people can't do for themselves, which is a very few things. So I walked into a situation where the town is well run. We have a good borough administrator. We have a good council. The public works, the DPW, fire, police are all run very, very well. So it's basically upgrades, which is what we started to do. Like I like working with the superintendent. They're building a new football field that's hopefully going to be done in time for a football season. It looks great so far. It's modeled. It's a blue and gold. It looks kind of like the Boise State field from Idaho.
Okay.
We're building a brand new playground. Hopefully the completion date will be October, November-ish, with no supply chain issues. But that took a year and a half of planning with our committee and council. And then I'm hoping that there's a couple of other parks we have to work on, and I really want to redo our downtown area. It's a little bit of a time capsule and needs to be upgraded, but we're reaching out to investors to see who's interested, and hopefully we can get that done sooner rather than later.
I think it's fair to say, Mr. Mayor, that your abilities as an attorney and the ability to negotiate and deal with various parties along different socioeconomic backgrounds or different business backgrounds, I think, is certainly well serving the residents of Butler. Am I wrong?
No, I don't know if it's if the attorney aspect of it, but I've always liked solving problems. It makes me happy when someone has a problem and I can help them with it. And almost right off the bat, the emails, the phone calls, the Facebook DMs of just people from town. Hey, can we do something about this? I always want to know about, and they never did this before. I don't know if they felt that they couldn't reach out to prior administrations. I don't know. I can't answer that. But I know that there's a lot more people that feel comfortable reaching out to me, regardless of their affiliation. And again, at the local level, we're not really talking about the same issues we would at national and state. We're talking, you're filling potholes, you're making the town better. You're talking about things that we should be joined in this together. There really shouldn't be that much static at the local level. You shouldn't be that much of a lightning rod that people have like a hatred towards you at this level. So but again, my philosophy of just helping everyone not getting involved in people's lives, that rings with a lot of people of all different backgrounds. So I think that leads to a lot of success.
That's an excellent reflection of public service. That's for sure. Folks, it's 6:10 here on the East Coast. If you just joined us live on Facebook via StreamYard and also on the Jersey First YouTube page, my guest this week here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe is the distinguished mayor of Butler, New Jersey, the Honorable Ryan Martinez, here on the program. Mr. Mayor, one of the things that really caught my attention about you, I know I had a chance to meet you earlier in the year at a Jersey First TV event near Wayne. I know obviously we saw each other at the Republican National Hispanic Assembly luncheon, right, for the New Jersey chapter in Hackensack, and a really sweltering Sunday, but it was a great turnout to say the least. It wasn't like, well, there's no Hispanic representation here among conservatives or people that identify as Republicans. That was not the case. And I know you're someone that is a very proud Hispanic and also I think a proud Republican. I mean, I think what you like to espouse, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, as you mentioned before, limited government. You want free markets. You want people's lives to flourish and prosper without government, again, being punitive, without government micromanaging, which, let's be honest, doesn't matter what race or gender you are. No one likes to be micromanaged. But I think especially among the Hispanic community, because we're growing and the census data tells us that, I would argue that the message that you convey, I think other Hispanic elected officials convey, has to be a breath of fresh air. I mean, obviously, seeing you Sunday at that event is not the first time you've gone to these sort of functions. When you talk to not just your constituents, but others in your travels throughout New Jersey, what's the feedback been about, oh my God, you're Hispanic, you're conservative? How did that happen? What's your response when you get that sort of pushback?
I have to be honest, I don't get that a lot. I mean, look, I don't really look Hispanic. I'm also a mix. Like my father was Hispanic and Black. My mom is Russian, Polish, Jewish. I have the Hispanic last name. But again, I'm not into like the identity politics. I don't think being Hispanic really matters. Like I think Kenny Gonzalez at the NJGOP did a fantastic event that was very well attended. We talked about that at the event. But I think the reason why a lot of Hispanics maybe lean a little towards the conservative side is because a lot of the conservative values speak to them. I've never heard any Hispanic in my circle anyway want to be referred to as Latinx or however that doesn't seem to be
that's absurd. It's absurd.
I don't know anyone. Yeah, I don't know anyone who's interested in that. That's Hispanic. With the Second Amendment, my cousin from Oakland, he's a Hispanic gentleman as well. We were sitting with a group of people, and every single one of them were talking about how they're all armed. They all want to protect their families. They don't brandish it. They don't show it. They don't talk about it. We were just having a conversation about security and family because these are all men who are married, are actively involved in their kids' life. So that speaks to us. Family is very, very important to the Hispanic community. I think that a lot of them come from areas of the world like Cuba, Venezuela, where socialism was big. They've seen the horrors of it. So now the Democrats are kind of openly embracing socialism. That's a huge turnoff for them. And I've spoken to a lot of people, especially the older ones. When they hear that Democrats are embracing socialism, they get angry. And it's not for play. Like they remember what they grew up with, and they cannot believe that somebody would advocate for some of these policies with the disaster that caused. And then I think while they might have been in the Democrat circles for so long, I think that there's no longer any reason to just rely on them. It's mostly rhetoric and empty promises, useless issues. They feel that they're being held back, that they don't have opportunities because of too many rules, too many laws, too many things that just get in their way. I think they're fed up and they've had it.
Mr. Mayor, I'm with you. And, being Hispanic, I as much as anyone, denounce identity politics all the time. I can't stand the entire Latinx nonsense that's sort of being force-fed down our throats by white woke people. I say it all the time on my show, not just as an academic, but right behind me, folks, there's that library, tons of books I have from my undergraduate years at Rutgers in New Brunswick, and also my graduate days at Rutgers in Newark. Somewhere in there, I know there is a intro to biology textbook. So if any of you need that to understand that there's only two genders, I'll be happily mail it to you. I'll pay the postage, okay? Especially to everyone out there. Again, as an Hispanic male, I'm offended when I try to get far left people trying to tell me, Mr. Mayor, how to identify. It's Latino or Latina, not Latinx. There's no ambiguity here. None of this gender fluidity nonsense that, that the pronoun people or the alphabet mob try to force feed us. I'm sorry, I'm not about that. I'm tolerant, but that doesn't mean I have to tolerate your nonsense. There's a big difference. So I'm with you about that when it comes to identity politics, and it's so insufferable.
To add to that, I mean, from personal experience, I can tell you that the all-white council in this predominantly majority white town appointed this mixed race, Black, Hispanic, Jewish guy to be their mayor. So I'm not really sure that it's a real problem right now. I'm not saying there's not instances of it, but I don't know if it's as prevalent as some people like it to be.
No, absolutely. Mr. Mayor, let's switch gears here. We'll get back to Butler in a minute, but obviously the luncheon I saw you at recently, hosted by the New Jersey chapter of the Republican National Hispanic Assembly, was really hammering home some points. And obviously the biggest one, it's an election year. Midterms are coming up in probably less than 5 months this November. And we know that there are a lot of competitive House seats here in the Garden State. For example, where I live in Hudson County, which is Congressional District number 8, listen, it's as blue as Windex here, okay? So Robert Menendez Jr., who is running to fill the vacancy really by the retiring Albio Ceres, is a sure win this November. Right next door in Bergen County, Josh Gottheimer, another guy that's going to win as well. Now, next door to him, we have Bill Pascrell. Most likely, not throwing shade at Billy Premp because, he's a friend of mine, but realistically, it sounds like Bill Pascrell is probably going to win that race. But, as we move a little bit more west, Central and South Jersey, though, Mr. Mayor, Republicans have a chance to win some seats back that they lost in 2018. It was easy for them, whether it was Mikey Sherrill, Bill Malanowski. Bill Malanowski? Is it Bill Malanowski?
Tom Malanowski.
Tom Malanowski, I'm sorry. Tom Malanowski, Andy Kim, Bonnie Watson-Coleman. It was easy to run in 2018 because you had a boogeyman that you wanted to sort of weaponize for fear, and that was the 45th president. He's no longer in office. Clearly, you're going to have to win a race on your own because there's no way anybody would want to have Sleepy Joe come to New Jersey and campaign for them with an awful economy, with the supply chain issues we're having, with the fact that we're not drilling domestically, with the fact that we're catering to far woke nonsense and pronouns are more important than feeding babies and providing formula. I mean, this is the stuff that makes Democrats vulnerable. Up by me, it's pretty blue, but up by you, south of you, it seems that Republicans have a chance to win some House seats. Which seats do you think are probably the most attainable for Republicans?
You know me well enough, so I'm not deflecting and I'm not trying to be nice to everyone, but I disagree with the assumption that there are races that are winnable and some that are completely unwinnable. As far as I'm concerned, all 12 of those districts are in play. And it kind of frustrates me personally that, and we hear these conversations, like we run similar circles and they say like, okay, this district is not a chance. This one's close. This one isn't. That's the biggest problem that we have, is that we write off certain districts or certain towns or certain areas because we see blue plus fill in the number, and you can't do that. We're seeing it again. I'll go back to the Hispanic Coalition event that we went to. We see how well attended it was. We know people in our lives that are starting to switch how they vote and how they feel about certain things. There's not a single district in this state that should be written off as like that's unwinnable. I don't believe it is. I believe if you have a good ground game, if you campaign and you get some backing behind you and you just talk real to people, I think anyone has a chance to do it. So I would say that every single one of those will play, not just 7, which became a little more red. Sure, 11 became a little more blue, but again, you're going against a very unpopular president who has not a single thing that he can hang his hat on, like, look, I did that and this is positive. Whether it be inflation, the energy independence, immigration, crime, what's going on in schools, the Afghan withdrawal, I could go on and on and on. They have nothing to run on. And if you put that on them, that they agree with this, they voted with him on all of this. Not Nancy Pelosi, not maybe some of the other fringe issues, but this is what's going on in the world right now. This is your president, and these people are with him. That has to be hammered.
Well said. Definitely have to hammer that point home. And again, he's the head of your party. So he's the guy that represents your party. He's the guy that I would argue that if he's doing such a great job, then why not invite the president to come campaign for you, right? When I saw Tom Malanowski pretty much over the weekend say, oh, yeah, I'm not going to invite the president. You know what that's telling people? Yeah, I don't want Joe Biden anywhere near me. I don't want him riding a bicycle near me, God forbid. I don't want him getting off Air Force God forbid. I don't want him anywhere near within a metric mile of me. And I think that's a smart move by Malinowski, but it's also going to force him to, again, pull up his pants, as they say, tighten the belt and say, I'm going to have to win a race on my own. I don't have a boogeyman to deflect to like he did in 2018. Same thing with Mikey Sherrill. Listen, nothing against Mikey Sherrill. Honorable woman who served in our military. Kudos to her. But again, it's easy to run in a district where, listen, as Montclair, the People's Republic of Montclair, it doesn't get any more communist than the city of Montclair. But, whether it's Mikey Sherrill, whether it's Bonnie Coleman, whether it's Andy Kim, I mean, these are, again, races that were easy to win in 2018 because of every midterm. We know during the first term of a presidency, the opposing party tends to win the House. Again, there have been some exceptions, right? And again, I don't want to sort of put on my history professor hat because it's summer. I'm not teaching summer, right? But, it's only been a handful of times in recent memory. 2002, under President George W. Bush, Republicans actually held on to the House and added seats. And in 1934, President Franklin Roosevelt, Democrats held the House and actually added seats as well. So by and large, historically, the opposing party tends to win the House. Republicans seem to be really poised to do that. There's been a lot of Democrats retiring all over the country. I think they see the unpopularity of this presidency, about woke politics. And again, let me be very clear, because people at home might say, oh, Fernando's fixating on the word. No, I'm not fixating on the word. It's because what you're trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, especially those on the left, is invoke this nonsense, whether you don't know about biology, whether you're catering to identity politics, whether you're catering to victimhood and all this other nonsense that many on the left like to do. Yeah, well, guess what? These are candidates, like you said, they voted with Nancy Pelosi and the agenda by the House Democrats. They can't blame Trump for everything. If they got a flat tire, they blame Trump. If they got the wrong change at the supermarket or at the car wash, guess what? The workers didn't wax their tires sufficiently. Oh, it's Trump's fault. Can't blame Donald Trump anymore. He's not president. So I think it's these sort of House races that I think are interesting, but by the same token, I think it forces Democrats, I would say, to look in the mirror, Mr. Mayor. I think a lot of them aren't doing that.
Not only they're not doing it, the one thing that kind of concerns me, because there's a lot of high-fiving and backslapping right now, like, oh, we're going to take the House, we're going to take the Senate because they're so unpopular. But I feel like you could do even better, but you have to explain why you're different. It seems like, and I think Mitch McConnell came out and actually said this, that their kind of plan is just to point out how bad the Democrats are doing. They're not going to have a legislative agenda. They're not going to put forth anything. All they're going to do is just point and go, do you want this to continue? But that's, for a lot of people that pay attention to this, that's not really comforting. It's like, are you going to lower taxes? Are you going to open up the economy? Are you going to make sure that we never have lockdowns and mandates ever again? These are some of the things that people want to hear, and a lot of people aren't saying it. So yeah, they're going to win just because of how bad things are. But we could have probably super majorities if we can come out and get around these certain issues and say, look, this is what we're going to do. This is how life's going to improve. And I don't hear that right now, and that's what it kind of bugs me.
Mr. Mayor, you said it perfectly, I think. And that's sort of the feeling I got at the luncheon we were at recently. Again, no, I'm not trying to throw shade at State Chairman Bob Hugan because he has a tough job, obviously trying to rally and mobilize Republicans in New Jersey and get them sort of motivated in this midterm election year. But you're right. It's just like, hey, anybody with two eyes that has some sort of above average reading comprehension skill and is somewhat cognitive, right, cognitively functional, can understand the Democrats, what they're doing at the national level. They're doing a horrendous job. We get it. We know how atrocious their policy is and their policy prescriptions are. But as you say, it's not enough. You have to be able to give people, the way you win elections is winning over independents. How are you going to win over independent with just saying, well, Democrats are bad, they're woke, they're trying to groom your kids, they're trying to sexualize curriculum in our public schools? That's all true. But you also have to talk about kitchen table issues. You have to talk about pocketbook issues. What's it going to be like if by the end of the year, these gas prices are still, above $4? It's inexcusable that they're this high, that it's costing you probably almost $500, if not more, than it was a full calendar year to go grocery shopping. You see what I'm saying? These are things you have to articulate in a message. And I think that's been the problem of the NJGOP for some time. We know what the message is. Maybe they're not sending out the right messenger. I mean, case in point, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago with State Senator Michael Testa. I'm not sure if you caught the episode, but I had Chris Russell on, Jack Chiarelli's campaign person, on a few months back. And even Assemblyman Christopher DePhillips, who threw out this number that sickened me. Only 39% of registered Republicans came out last November to vote. Right. If you're complaining about how expensive New Jersey is because Governor Phil Murphy is going to continue making it more expensive, and even though Republicans shaved a little bit into the majorities in both the state Senate and the state assembly, guess what? If even 10% more Republicans came out to vote, we're probably talking about Governor Ciattarelli, and we're probably talking about maybe a couple more districts that flip red. And again, it's getting the message out. I don't think always the NJGOP has the best messengers. I'm not auditioning to be one. I mean, I'm a journalist, and you're an elected official. But I think that if you're going to have people out there sending a message, it's got to be better. It's got to be more defined and articulated. They're not doing that, Mr. Mayor, like you said.
I think Jack did a pretty decent job of running up and down the state. I mean, the man was literally everywhere. He was. And you have to remember, too, I think this is part of it. When the race was announced, they said Phil Murphy was going to win by 25 points. And I think a lot of people stayed home because they thought my vote's not going to matter. It's 2-1 Democrat. He's not going to win. I'm not going to waste my time. Plus, there was some infighting between the Jack versus Phil, Rizzo versus Hirsch. Some people are like, I'm not voting for Jack. And that's the one thing that has to stop. I mean, I know it's easy to say. I have my opinions about voting for the candidate you believe in. But once Jack was the nominee, we should have all rallied behind him. And that didn't happen, and a lot of people stayed home. That's because I think they thought that he wasn't going to win. Excuse me.
And Mr. Mayor, and real quick, I'll let you finish. I'm sorry. And shame on them because, for the record, I was the only journalist that called that race close. And I got laughed at by tons of journalists. I can show you social media screenshots that I took of people saying, Fernando doesn't know what he's talking about. Dr. Uribe knows what he's talking about. And I called that race 3 to 4 points. And again, for the variables you mentioned, there are probably a little bit more than 1.5 million more registered Democrats. Democrats do a better job in a lot of these urban areas to mobilize, go door to door, and register voters. So it was all those variables. I said, hey, it's because of that Governor Murphy is going to win re-election by a really slim margin, but Jack can make it really, really close and scary. And he did. Obviously, the election wasn't called until I think Thursday night. So, Phil Murphy had to sweat it out for about 48 hours, 72 hours, because, hey, he was unpopular in many pockets of the state. Not enough. But again, it goes back to your point. Republicans in New Jersey have no one to blame but themselves. If even 10%, if even half of registered Republicans came out to vote, we're not talking about Phil Murphy. We're not talking about, some districts that maybe could have gone red. And again, Democrats seem to have this stranglehold on the legislature. They have for 20 years. It seems that with really urban areas like Hudson County, Bergen, Union, Essex, Camden, Mercer, Middlesex. Yeah, those are areas where Democrats do really, really well. But at the same time, there are some districts that you can flip over. I'm hoping that they can be just as active in 2023 because some districts can go red, Mr. Mayor.
They can. Well, first of all, I give my hats off to Kenny Gonzalez for putting together that event that we went to. And I've told Kenny and Bob both that in the future, anything that they need from me, I'm willing to help. Because again, I just feel that the one problem that we have is that we only show up right before the primary and before election day. Yeah. And sometimes not at all. It has to be a year-round thing. Again, it's not propaganda. It's like, look, this is why we're better. We're the freedom people. This is what we want to do. But just explain your message. It might not happen overnight. It might not happen in the next election cycle, but there will be a switch because the people who hear it, they relate to it and they understand it. And they know that they're stuck in this vortex. It's never going to change it to keep voting the same way. But it just has to continue. And that's one thing I hope to do with Jersey First. That's one thing I'm doing with Blexa as well, is just to get that message across to as many people as possible. Again, it's not for power. I don't even take a salary at my mayor's job. I rejected it. I'm not looking for money and power. But I do want to live in a more freedom-based world, and I feel like that's slowly going away. And again, I don't know how you can argue with freedom.
Absolutely. Folks, it's 6:30 here on the East Coast. If you're just joining us live on Facebook via streaming and also on the Jersey First TV YouTube page, my guest this week here on Real Talk is the distinguished mayor of Butler, New Jersey, the Honorable Ryan Martinez, here on the show. If you just join us, sharing is caring. Click the share button. Keep the comments coming. We love to hear from our fans here on Jersey First TV. Mr. Mayor, getting back to the event I saw you at recently for the Republican National Hispanic Assembly, I saw you some months even before then during the Morris County Convention. And you hit on a note that really resonates with me. It's this infighting or this sort of tribalism that exists in different counties within Republicans. And we saw that at the Morris County Convention, trying to nominate a candidate for Congress, right, for county commissioners, for sheriff and all that. It just seems like I get it. Whether it's people that are very, very conservative, people that are in the middle of the road, this is where Republicans have to sort of mobilize and say, hey, listen, there's a lot of different ideological diversity under this tent. Let's just all mobilize together. Democrats do a really good job of mobilizing. Even if they don't like their candidate, they do a really good job of mobilizing, because in the end, whether they weaponize fear-mongering, they weaponize take your pick on any issue, Republicans don't have to weaponize or go through fear-mongering. Just call out exactly what's the other side doing wrong and what will they do better. I think that at the end of the day is what needs to be the message. Again, when I saw at the Morris County Committee, and I interviewed, I think, well over 10 people, and I remember hearing them all out, giving everybody a platform. And I just got this sense that, again, like anything else, tribalism within a party is toxic. And at the end of the day, it really hurts the candidates, because you're just trying to mobilize people and get them just energized. Republicans sometimes, it's like they're going for the end zone. They see the goal line, and for whatever reason, they either step out of bounds, they fumble the football, or take a knee before they should. It's like that sort of self-implosion, like you mentioned. All this high-fiving I'm seeing right now, all this pat on the back, I get it. It's easy to be giddy and cocky because Democrats at the national level and state level are doing such an atrocious job. But at the end of the day, they got to get the message out and be better. Have a better game plan. Have a better blueprint. That's not always the case. Is that fair to say?
First of all, I saw you interview well more than 10 people.
Okay.
I was saying this for most of them. You interviewed a ton of people that night, and you did a really good job. I was one.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
And listen, everyone has their beliefs, everyone has their opinions, even within the party. People got to express it by voting for the line. Some people weren't happy. I understand why they're unhappy. I always stay from the beginning because everyone looks for endorsements. I think personally, I've said it before and I'll say it publicly, I think endorsements are meaningless. I don't think anyone's really paying attention to who I'm endorsing, and that's going to sway them either which way, one way or another. You have your candidates. We vote. If you want to go by line, fine. If it's not, if it's just an open, fine. But whoever comes out winning the primary, that's who you have to get behind. Unless they are just so far off of your principles and values that you can't actually do it. But just because it's not your candidate, I don't see what the purpose is of staying home or not voting or going down a path that you absolutely despise. I don't get it. I agree with you 100%. There needs to be more of a mobilization effort, but there's very few people who are actually trying to make those inroads. I know a couple of them. I work with them to try to get. I feel like it's kind of split into like the old guard, the Trumps, and then sort of like this new breed of Republican that's a little more freedom-based and almost a little more libertarian, if you will. I feel like there's like three different factions, but they all need to come together because ultimately we all want the same thing.
I'm with you. Listen, it's about unity. It's about just getting independents, libertarians, moderates together and saying, listen, let's just sort of bite our tongue here. Let's unite and let's win races. Because at the end of the day, Democrats can have infighting too, but it just seems like statewide they do a better job in some parts of the state. And they may not be in love. Listen, there is no way, if you have any cognitive ability and you have two eyes and they're relatively functional, that anyone in their right mind can tell me that Coleman, or is it Watson? I forget it.
Bonnie Watson Coleman.
Thank you. Coleman or Andy Kim or Frank. Jesus Christ. Frank, you want to talk about a blowhard like Frank Pallone. You want to talk about Bill Pascrell. Like, these are establishment politicians that virtue signal, that love to grandstand. I mean, last week, I'm going to talk about an article that Max Pizarro, the jokester, the clown Max Pizarro, wrote for Insider NJ about Coleman marching in Washington, right, about reproductive rights, as if that woman's got anything to worry about in New Jersey. I mean, Jesus Christ. But I'll get to that later. But the problem is, it's these establishment politicians that, for whatever reason, Democrats will just keep voting in, and the ROI. I mean, listen, I grade for a living, but if I had to give an ROI grade for what their constituents are getting, I mean, there isn't a grade worse than an F, but you have to give it an F. And I think that's what Republicans have to hammer home. Like, listen, you've been reelecting these clowns to Washington for years, if not decades. All right, some other are newer representatives in the House, but like you have to be able to have a better message and say, hey, we keep reelecting these fossils, these career politicians that, listen, we have a career politician in the White House. Look how great that's going for us. So it's like Republicans have to almost kind of put the boot on someone's throat and say, listen, got to wake up here. This is what's wrong. This is what we're going to do right if you elect us into office. I'm hoping Tom Kaine's people are listening to me. I hope that others that are running on the Republican side can be just as, I don't know, motivated. Because I don't see that right now, though. Ryan, I get it. It's the summer. People want to be out. It's the first summer in 2 years. You could be at the beach. You could be drinking outside, going to parties, going to ball games, whatever. I get it. This return to normalcy is wonderful. You can't be this disengaged, folks. You can't just pay attention after Labor Day. You got to be engaged now.
I agree with you, but there's also a point where, all right, perfect example, Jersey First for the past few months have went into Newark on Sunday mornings. They work with that group, the WGT. They pass out clothes, coffee and donuts, breakfast items. And we talk to the people that are on the line, and they've never seen Republicans there before. And they're almost shocked when we tell them what we are and what we're doing. They don't see us there. So, yeah, you might give an F to the people in charge, but when there's no other option in their eyes, what are they going to do? Half the time, there's not even another person on the ballot. And if they, how many times have you heard, oh, yeah, are you going to go to this town or this town? No, it's too blue. It's not worth it. Well, that's why they keep voting, because they have no other option.
That's fair. And it's funny about Newark. You mentioned it, because I know last week, I think Ross Baraka was at the NAACP convention in Atlantic City. And this guy had the gall and the audacity to say, well, if we don't take care of voting rights in New Jersey, we'll become another Texas. Yo, Ross, have you seen how well run Texas is? The great freedom-loving state of Texas? I mean, yeah, forgive me for being a little biased. As you can see the Dallas Cowboy helmet behind me, I love the state of Texas. But putting that aside, like, it's a well-run state. So, Ross, no offense, bro, but if New Jersey was a little bit more like Texas, yeah, we'd be much better off. So, but you're right. It just seems like residents aren't really being exposed. And listen, kudos to my bosses at Jersey First TV, obviously, Rosemary Becky, Audrey Lane, Elizabeth Nader, and everyone, you yourself, all the great interns we have at Jersey First TV. That's what's important, getting the message out. Not just doing it 2 weeks before Election Day, doing it months and months in advance, getting the message out there, showing that, hey, Republicans aren't this boogeyman that the liberal mainstream media paints us out to be, right? Like garbage news sites in New Jersey, like the Star Ledger, NorthJersey.com, NJTV, Insider NJ, they have to do a better job, and they've been doing that. So I think that's a breath of fresh air.
Especially, I'll go with Jersey First again, like with school. Going into certain neighborhoods that have failing schools and going, are you happy with your school system right now? Okay, our policy is we want you to be able to go to put your son or daughter in any school that you choose. That's not going to resonate with people who have horrible school systems, that the parents are starving for either charter schools or homeschooling or anything they can do to make that situation better. Here, this is the way welfare is ran. I'm an attorney, and I can't tell you how many people in court I won't stop counting. Someone going, yeah, I could get a job as X, but if I take the job, then I lose my benefits, and the job pays me less than my benefits give me. So I'm not going to take the job. That person's not lazy. They're not stupid. They're doing something that's best for them. The system is designed to keep them in that position, so they can't move up. They'll be taking a shot. I'm going to make $19,000 as a home health aide, or I get $45,000 in benefits. Which would you take?
Absolutely.
So if you elect me, I'll let you work for a couple of years. I'll give you a chance to pad your bank account so you can move to a different town or fix up the area you have there. There has to be opportunity, and we have to start rewarding opportunity. There has to be laws and incentives that when you step up, good things happen. Not when you fail, we give you more money. And these are things I think will resonate with people that are in poorer communities, and that's what we should be running on. Not just, as we keep saying over and over again, look how bad they're doing.
Absolutely. A much better message and much better execution and presentation of the message, I think, goes a long way, Mr. Mayor. Before I let you go, I know you've had a long day. I appreciate you being on with me. Folks, at 6:40 here on the East Coast on Jersey First TV via YouTube and also on Facebook Live via StreamYard. My guest this week is the Honorable Mayor from the borough of Butler, New Jersey, in Morris County, the distinguished Ryan Martinez, joining us here on Real Talk. Mr. Mayor, maybe for our fans at home, I know that aside from being fellow conservatives, we're also big pro wrestling fans.
We are.
And, this past weekend truly was the end of an era. It was pretty much, the end of the news cycle dump Friday afternoon after the market closed. Vincent Kennedy McMahon, the owner of World Wrestling Entertainment, at one time the World Wrestling Federation, announced his retirement from the company. He also announced his retirement overall, where he's no longer even doing or heading creative. That's his son-in-law, Paul Levesque, otherwise known as Triple H. His daughter, Stephanie McMahon Levesque, along with Nicholas Khan, will be co-CEOs of the company. Mr. Mayor, for as long as, I'm probably a little bit older than you are, but for most of my adolescence and adult life, I've loved pro wrestling since I was 5 years old. All I've ever known was Vince McMahon. All I've ever known is that every T-shirt I have in my closet, every DVD that I still have in storage, the reason I, pay $5 a month for the Peacock streaming service for NBC Universal to watch the WWE Network with the 57 commercials every hour, every pay-per-view, whatever. I'm sorry, premium live event. All I've ever known is Vince McMahon. And it seems like these sexual misconduct allegations against Vince McMahon maybe caught up to him again. I don't know what the Wall Street Journal will be reporting this week. We all know that millions of dollars in hush money has been paid out to settle out of court, to have women sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. But at the end of the day, even tonight, Madison Square Garden will be the first Monday Night Raw that, guess what, when you walk through that curtain, Vince McMahon isn't there. He's not doing creative. He's not going to be booking. He's not going to be scheduling. It's an end of an era. Again, we've known Vince McMahon he's been a part of our lives for as long as I can remember. What are your fondest memories as a wrestling fan about how you perceive Vince McMahon, Mr. Mayor?
Well, when I was a kid, I was probably about 8 years old when I kind of fell into wrestling. I still remember I was at a birthday party and the kid whose birthday was got those LJN figures for his birthday. And I'm like, what is this? And everyone looked at me like, you don't watch wrestling. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. So they explained it. I still remember the first show I saw was a Saturday night main event where Hulk Hogan fought Don Morocco and Bundy comes in and hurts him.
That was 1980. That was February 86, right up to their matchup at WrestleMania 2. That's right.
That was the first wrestling show I ever watched, and I got hooked immediately. But at that time, I only knew Vince McMahon as an announcer. I had no idea he owned the company.
Same here.
Or the history with his father, grandfather. Didn't know that. I remember as I got older, though, you remember the Pro Wrestling Illustrated and the wrestling magazines? They always used to have the guys who argued about NWA versus WWF, and that's where I learned he was the owner. And that blew my mind. And then he kind of stepped out into the show in '97 after the screw job, where he kind of went with the evil McMahon. Excuse me. And it was amazing. That's when WCW and WWF were at the height of their popularity. There was 11 to 15 million people watching every week. It was huge. You watched as a kid, then when you got into your teenagers, you kind of strayed away a little bit, and then you went to college and you came back. And then WCW went out of business. I think the WWF kind of went down product-wise afterwards. Last 15 years have been kind of rough.
Well, again, listen, I think it's not for everybody. I think over the years, Vince McMahon's become a good businessman. He's catered the product to a different demographic, a different audience. Listen, let's be fair. He's been great at business. He's been able to get Monday Night Raw and keep it on USA Network. He's been able to get SmackDown on Fox TV, which is watched regularly by more than 2 million people every Friday night. Even before that, we're talking about pay-per-views. We're talking about stadiums selling out, whether it's the Pontiac Silverdome in 1987, right? Over 90,000 people. In 2016, in perhaps the greatest stadium in North America, Cowboy Stadium in Dallas, Texas, we had over 102,000 people for WrestleMania 32. This is a guy who has filled stadiums, who has put on shows. And it's funny because whether it's my students or women that I date or whoever will be like, I can't believe you're watching pro wrestling. How old are you again? And my answer is always consistent. Do you watch soap operas? Do you watch reality TV? If you watch Jersey Shore or The Apprentice or Days of Our Lives or General Hospital or whatever it is, if you watch Marvel movies, and I'm a big Marvel fan, I read comic books, you can't get on me. I've had girlfriends say to me, oh my God, I'm so excited to go see Avengers. Great. But then when I tell them watch wrestling, why are you watching that garbage? I'm like, wait a minute, I just took you to see the Avengers. How, you can suspend disbelief for that, but not for this? I've always felt like I've been defending pro wrestling my entire adult life, but I take it with a badge of honor because it's entertainment for me, not for everybody, but I like it.
It's fun. And to answer your point, yeah, Vince McMahon took wrestling to heights that was almost unheard of if you went back to the 40s, 50s, and 60s and told them what wrestling would become. And that's him. He pretty much took every major star from every territory. He made it gigantic in the 80s. It became mainstream in the 80s. And there is that little ribbing where people like to make fun of.
Sure.
You know it's fake, right? Well, the pain's real. It's scripted. It might be, you might know where the match is going, but the pain is definitely real.
And the reason the pain is real is because, again, and by the way, thank you for those tickets at the 80s WrestleCon up in the Morris County area. Folks, if you've ever gone to meet and greets or gone to any of these wrestling conventions, yeah, the outcomes are predetermined, but guess what? As you said, the pain is real. Go look up or go on YouTube and see male and female pro wrestlers and what they put their bodies through and what they're going through now in their later years. Knee replacements, hip replacements, concussions, even in some cases paralysis. So yeah, you know what? They might orchestrate behind the curtain who's going to win, but the bumps, the hits to your body, the toll, the punishment you're taking, that's not fake by any measure. So to everybody out there, educate yourselves, because if you watch movies and you watch stuntmen, these are professional stuntmen and stunt women that are very athletic and very talented.
The show you went to, that's ran by Tommy Fierro, who does ISPW. We run shows in Butler every other month. I have to thank him because this was before I even became mayor, I reached out to him because he was saying he was starting a wrestling promotion. He does meet and greets. He does shows on Facebook Live, and I've gotten to meet, I can't even count how many, I lost count a long time ago, of how many people from our era, from the 80s and 90s, doing these shows I got to meet personally. And it's been an amazing couple of years.
It certainly has been. And again, I'll continue watching pro wrestling. I'll watch it to my dying day, and it's entertaining for me. It gets buddies together. We can drink in my house, order a pizza. We have our favorites. We cheer them. We have the villains that we boo them. And that's what makes pro wrestling just like any other form of entertainment. Mr. Mayor, before I let you go, again, a great interview with you today. I thank you for your time. I appreciate you being a fan of the show and want to come on. Certainly, as we get later towards the fall, closer to midterm election time, I definitely want to pick your brain on what's going on in this sort of political climate. But I want to thank you for your time, for being a fan of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, and of course, being an ally with the Jersey First TV. I'll give you the last word, sir, here tonight.
I love what you do. Keep up the good work. Hope to come back in the future.
Mr. Mayor, that's very kind. I appreciate that. And again, sharing is caring, folks. Make sure you share tonight's episode on all of your social media. Folks, he is the distinguished mayor of Butler, New Jersey, Mr. Ryan Martinez, tonight's guest here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. Mr. Mayor, God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon here on Jersey First TV.
Have a great night. Thanks, Fernando.
Have a good one. Folks, great episode tonight with the distinguished mayor, once again, from the borough of Butler, New Jersey, the great Ryan Martinez here on the show. And folks, again, if you're just joining at 6:45 here on the East Coast, and certainly you can always check out the episode in its entirety by going to the Jersey First YouTube page right after the show ends the broadcast, and also on my Facebook wall. You can't miss me. I'm the handsome guy with the Joe Biden sucks t-shirt with the sunglasses. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you can't miss me. I'm that really photogenic guy when you type in Fernando Uribe. Folks, again, it's the end of the program, and of course, it's time for this week's winner of the worst journalist in the state of New Jersey. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I just can't pick one because there are multiple winners every single week. And guess who makes my job so infinitely easy? Of course, it's Insider NJ, the kings of bad journalism here in the state of New Jersey. So let me just go through a couple here, some columns. Let me tell you something. I got to go a little bit one at a time. And I don't want to harp on one person too long because I think they're all equally culpable and guilty of really atrocious journalism here in the state of New Jersey. But of course, a multiple-time winner here on the show. Yes, you know him, ladies and gentlemen. Bobby's World, Bobby Henley. Yes, the January 6th hysteric and climate hysteric as well. You know, it's funny because last week I know that Jay Lasher apparently took exception with me calling him a little bitch on the show, which prompted him to write another one of his garbage columns, which I'll get to in a minute. But of course, you know, when we talk about little bitches, well, so is Bobby Henley. You don't like being called out for bad journalism. So what do? You block people on social media like you blocked me. That's okay, Bobby. You can't take the heat, no problem. I get it. You're getting up there in age. You don't want to accelerate your stress levels. You don't want to get your blood pressure too high. I get it, bro. I understand. You know what I'm saying? You don't want your later years having to monitor your blood pressure every 2 seconds or someone calling you out on your nonsense. But I have to just tell you about the latest column this week. Oh my God, this was prime real estate right here. So he writes this insufferable 5-page column. And my God, it was really hysterical. It was America, a jump ball, right? I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a waste of your time. Again, if you're suffering from insomnia and you need to go to sleep early tonight, just read Bobby Henley's columns. I mean, I do whenever I need to go to sleep early, and believe me, it knocks me out every time. This is funny. He starts off this awful column, but as, quote, as the nation braces for tonight's primetime January 6th hearings, it's an opportune time to reflect on the central role New Jersey's natives are playing in how events unfolded on that day that our democracy had a near-death experience. Bobby, let me tell you something, bro. You're a grown-ass man. You weaponizing and engaging in fear-mongering is pretty disgraceful. There was no near-death experience for our democracy. There hasn't been, and there isn't going to be, okay? I mean, if we ever elect you to any sort of office, I could see maybe that happening. Then he continues with this garbage. By tracing how their personal stories continue to intertwine, we get a sense of the reality that the fate of our fragile republic is still very much in the air, a jump ball. Again, for those of you that maybe aren't familiar with the sports terminology, a jump ball essentially is when neither side has possession in the game of basketball. The referee stands in the middle of the two players, throws up in the air, and of course, whoever tips it to their direction, that's who has possession. So that's essentially the explanation of a jump ball. In short, the insurrection is ongoing. Earlier this month, former President Trump called the Speaker of the Wisconsin Assembly to ask to decertify the state's 2020 presidential election results. Former president still enjoys around-the-clock protection provided by the government he tried to overthrow, and it appears just as he did when he was in Atlantic City. He has co-opted elements of law enforcement who are drawn into supplication by his strongman image. It was on the watch of the current U.S. Secret Service Director, Charles M. Murray, a native of Point Pleasant and a Trump appointee, that the law enforcement agency purged all of its text messages, save one, from January 5th and 6th in violation of the Federal Records Act and after Congress requested them. By the way, Bobby, you do realize that when it came time to certify the election, that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi should have done a better job and better reconnaissance of getting the necessary staffing there to make sure there was ample security. But you never want to blame Nancy Pelosi, right? For that, it's always Trump, Trump, Trump. It's like you have like this perpetual hard-on in your pants for Donald Trump. But again, so he goes on with this joke of an article here, as he usually does, about January 6th. Folks, the reason I take exception with Bobby Henley is because this is a guy that if you go on muckrack.com and look up his columns, never once do you see him ever talk about wanting to have hearings or hold people accountable for cities that were burned to the ground during the summer of 2020, right? Because like him and other clowns at Insider NJ, they want to sort of talk about racial justice and everything else that went on. When what was going on? They were celebrating the life of a career criminal. That's all they were doing, right? I mean, Max Pizzaro has a picture of George Floyd as one of his profile pictures. That should just tell you how intellectually bankrupt Max is, to have the picture of a career criminal as your profile picture. I mean, I get it. You're not very photogenic to begin with, Max. But to have George Floyd on your profile pictures on social media, come on, do better. But getting back to Bobby Henley. Bob, again, I wish you were just as outraged for the millions of dollars in property damage to both public and private property, to federal buildings, to police stations, as you were about January the 6th. Because, folks, here's a newsflash. You know why people like Bobby Henley and Ali Steinberg and Maxie and little JJ have this perpetual hard-on, about January 6th, and they have these meltdowns and these columns, is because they're scared to death about the 45th president running again. So if anything can be done to stop that, well, hey, I'm all for it. That's probably what they're thinking. But guess what? Even if you succeed, you got Ron DeSantis warming up in the bullpen, and you don't want to face Ron DeSantis either. But again, folks, that's the mindset at Insider NJ, where you have people like Bobby Henley that engage in all this hysteria about January 6th. Bobby, it's July the 25th. Gas is still almost $5. Don't say to me, oh, well, gas went down 10, 20 cents. It's still over $4,000. So if you round up, it's $5. Okay? New Jerseyans and Americans across this country are still struggling to buy groceries because of inflation. because wages haven't sort of gone commensurate with it. Supply chain issues. We should be drilling domestically. But no, you don't care about any of that stuff because you're home scratching your ass, right? Writing these nonsense columns, all right? Trying to just fearmonger and drop hysteria. People this November are going to vote with their pockets because that's what matters. Kitchen table issues, meat potato issues, not the hysterics that you and Sleepy Al and the rest of the clown brigade, the lollipop guild, like to peddle at Insider NJ. So, when I think of Bobby Henley, again, folks, it's either read the columns to put you to sleep, or if you're moving, take the paper and wrap up expensive china or silver, because that's all it's good for. Or if you need, like the paperwork that you need, like let's say on the bottom of a bird cage or a cage of anything, right? Just, tear up an article like this and just, take it and then just toss it inside the cage, and whatever animal chooses to defecate on it, that's all it's good for. But let's move on. Let's move on to another clown member of the Lollipop Guild. I couldn't find a picture of Christine Sloan, but here's another good one. Oh, boy. The Trump factor looms over the midterms. No, it doesn't, Christine. Here we go. Since leaving office, former President Trump's actions or inactions have heavily influenced local elections. The 2022 midterm elections will be no different. But this time around, political analysts, because we can trust them on a national level, say it's going to be difficult to predict the result of many U.S. House Representative and Senate races across the nation because the political climate of the country changes rapidly from day to day. No, it doesn't, honey. The problem is you want to believe that, just like maybe you may want to believe in the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, right? Or that Stevie Wonder can drive, right? But that's not the case. Trump's been at the wheel of those erratic changes taking place. Here's one example. Even though he's no longer in office, Trump's selection of U.S. Supreme Court justices helped reverse a woman's right to choose. Whether you like it or not, the Trump factor is here to stay. Well, yes, Christine, when he was president, he had vacancies yet to fill, and he filled them with justices that he felt would interpret the Constitution as is, not engage in activism from the bench, which is what you would like it to be, right? But he elected traditionalists, jurists who believe in interpreting the document as is, not legislating or, deciding cases from the bench, again, in judicial activism, which is what the left loves to do, right? So here we go. It's why incumbent Democrat Congressman Tom Malinowski has been relentlessly crisscrossing his district, campaigning tirelessly in order to hold on to his seat in November. GOP candidate Tom Kean Jr. will challenge Malinowski once again in the 7th Congressional District, which is becoming more Republican. Malinowski defeated Kean Jr., the son of popular New Jersey Governor Tom Kean, by a very slim margin in the last election. Democrat Congressman Andy Kim has also been fighting hard to keep his seat in the 3rd Congressional District, heavily using social media to reach voters. He faces Republican candidate Bob Healy, a well-funded opponent. While the district is becoming more Democrat, Kim's not taking any chances. Well, you see, honey, this is the thing. The reason that they're working so hard is because they can't call the president to come campaign here in New Jersey for a variety of reasons. Number one, he could be riding a bicycle in New Jersey, and we all know how that's going to work out for Sleepy Joe. Number two, he might fall down the stairs when Air Force One's lands in whatever airstrip here in the Garden State. But this is an immensely unpopular president. And not once, sweetheart, do you ever write that in any of your garbage columns. Why don't you call it what it is? Again, it's a widely unpopular president with awful policies who would rather acquiesce to the alphabet mob and the pronoun people because, pronouns are more important than gas prices. Because making sure that we're woke and making sure that, we have transgendered people in our cabinet and lesbians and this and that, right, as a press secretary, that's more important, right? Be all woke and cater to the left and all this nonsense identity politic gibberish instead of focusing on real world issues. But again, Christine, that will require you, just like Bobby and the rest of the Lollipop Guild at Insider NJ, to have that pesky 4-syllable word. I'll say it again because it seems like it's lacking in Insider NJ: integrity. You write garbage columns like this without even stating the obvious. It's an unpopular president. Guess what? In 2018, Democrats had a boogeyman in the White House that they could weaponize and engage in fear-mongering. Of course, it was easy to win House races that way. But now that these grown men and women have to win races on their own, can they? We'll find out in less than 5 months. But garbage columns like this don't help anything because Donald Trump's not president, sweetheart. It's Joe Biden. And why Joe Biden isn't coming into New Jersey should make you wonder why no one's inviting him, because he's a liability. But again, it takes integrity to be able to write like that and say it openly. You don't have it. So once again, like Bobby Henley, I can read this to fall asleep, or I can read it to rap China and Silver Rain, or better yet, I can just do what everybody else does and tear up your garbage columns, because again, that's all that Christine Sloan's columns are good for. Let's move on. Oh, you know who I'm going to move on to. Oh, baby. You know who I like to move on to. Yes, Maxi Pizarro, the resident horse whisperer, as they say. And by the way, Max, just because you take a picture in front of a punching bag doesn't make you a tough guy. Come on, bro. Talk about dude, is someone overcompensating for something? Is someone really kind of really trying to project a little bit here? Whoa, Maxi, I'll tell you. Here's a good one. So Maxi this week, right? Again, another guy who loves to engage in January 6th hysteria, right? It's like it almost makes me think it's like Max, do you sit there at home watching horse porn and get as erect as you do thinking about January 6th? I'm convinced you do. Again, I don't want to visualize you watching horse porn, but I can almost see it. I can almost see you thinking, let me watch this horse porn and let me see what else gets me relatively hard. Oh yeah, January 6th. Yes, so let me write more garbage columns. And again, you help peddle this nonsense. So here we go. So talk about Congresswoman Watson Coleman arrested. This was funny. So last weekend, if you all saw this farce, you saw the Congresswoman, right, Watson Coleman, get arrested last weekend in Washington, along with the Puerto Rican princess, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right, because they were advocating or protesting about women's rights and about reproductive rights. Again, folks, it just seems like Maxi, again, get off the horse, or have the horse get off of you. Again, I don't know what order it is, what day of the week it is. I don't know who's riding who. But anyway, I don't know if Maxi needs a refresher or the Congresswoman needs a refresher. But again, see all these books behind me? In there are copies of the U.S. Constitution. And if you've read the 10th Amendment, you would know that what the Supreme Court did to all these virtue signalers, to all these insufferable feminists, to all these awful cat ladies that stink of cat piss. Yes, I can smell the cat piss here in Hudson County. That's how far down the stench permeates. But when you read the Supreme Court decision, again, it did not outlaw abortion. Okay? All it did was relegate it back to the states and let the states govern themselves as they wish. Here in New Jersey, is there any place easier in the country to terminate a pregnancy? Okay? If you're a woman and you get knocked up and you want to reconsider your pregnancy, folks, there's no shortage of clinics, whether it's run by Planned Parenthood, right? And we all know the millions of dollars they get in subsidies, or the millions of dollars that they give to Insider NJ for advertising. More on that later. Okay? So if you want to terminate a pregnancy, you can do that in New Jersey. It's not a problem. You can do it across the river in New York too. Okay? For all the ladies this summer, during single girl summer, right, after your drunken weekends and you need a plan B, right, after some really bad decisions on Monday morning, guess what? You can get a plan B anywhere you want. It's still very attainable, all right, after a weekend of drunken, irresponsible drinking and whatever the risque behavior, okay? You can get that. That's not a problem, all right? But you would make it, people like Coleman, people like the writers at Insider NJ, activists, other journalists would make it seem that, oh my God, abortion is going to be outlawed everywhere. No, it's not. And by the way, do you think people in Alabama, Max, or Tennessee, or Kentucky, or Mississippi, or Texas, or Florida, or wherever, do you think they care anymore that here in New Jersey, that we have the highest property taxes in the country, that we spend recklessly, that we coddle and cater to illegals at every turn? Do you think that they care? Of course not. So don't worry about what's going on in those states. If they want to, restrict abortion, that's their right. Again, it's the 10th Amendment. It's called federalism. It's contained in the Constitution. If you want, Maxie, since you're sitting at home doing nothing and scratching your ass, writing garbage columns, and of course horseback riding, okay, I can mail you a copy of the Constitution. You can read the Bill of Rights. You can read the 10th Amendment. Okay, I'm not going to read it. I've been reading it for the last few weeks here. If you don't know by now, come on, folks. You're a smart audience. You know what the 10th Amendment says. Okay? But you write these garbage columns sort of glorifying and trying to put someone like Coleman, who's a clown, who's a career politician, on a pedestal. You should know better, Max. But again, that will require you to have integrity. And we all know you don't have any. when you continue to publish garbage columns like this. Speaking of another garbage column by Maxi Pizarro, oh, this is a good one right here. I just started over the weekend. He says the title is an editorial, "For the Good of the Republic, Garland, Prosecute." So according to the legal scholar, Maxi Pizarro, based on the evidence presented to the nation last night, which, by the way, I think Maxi, along with maybe like 9 other people, watched the January 6th hearings, which no one cares about. Max, I know you do. Again, like, I don't know what gets you more perpetually erect, horse porn or January 6th. I don't know if people riding horses or horses riding people gets you like just erect or January 6th. I'm really, really curious. I'd really love to hear your answer as to what gets you more perpetually erect on a daily basis. But this is the thing, though, Max. Again, and you write this nonsense here. Based on the evidence presented to the nation last night, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland should prosecute former President Donald Trump to the full extent. Built on the rule of law and the peaceful transition of power, the United States lives or dies on our defiance of tyranny. Okay, thank you for the attempt at you being a history professor, which God forbid if that ever happened. We heard recorded transmissions last night from professional security people for then Vice President Mike Pence. Afraid for his security as Pence sought to legally and justly ratify the 2020 as a mob exhorted by Trump, stormed the U.S. Capitol to disrupt that civil act. Let's go for another one. Oh, this is a great line right here. Another piece of gold real estate by Maxine. For the good of the country, in honor of the rule of law, and as a vital recommitment to who we are as Americans. Jesus Christ. Max, you running for mayor? What's going on here? Come on. This is probably the best sentence you've written in like the last 6 months. Garland should and must prosecute this case. He goes on to say a couple other things here. He believes that the Attorney General has issued to date that he will prosecute. Garland needs to, because we are not the capricious and unlawful will of one man. Jesus Christ. We are the indivisible United States of America. Our motto is E pluribus unum, out of one many, meaning one country, not one man, and our country brilliantly conceived as a democratic republic. It's a constitutional republic, Max, but why let facts and details get in the way of you bloviating? Hangs perilously in the balance as long as we allow this to stand. In the words of President George Washington, you probably have to Google this because you don't know this offhand. Quote, arbitrary power is most easily established on the ruins of liberty abused to licentiousness. Let that not be our own indolent and ignorant contribution to the maintenance of our system, precious and fragile, probably like you're behind after all the horses you ride, requiring at all times the robust vigilance we desperately need now in service to the rule of law. Jesus Christ, Max, really? Again, in an election year, when Americans are struggling, New Jerseyans are struggling to fill up their gas tanks, to go grocery shopping, to get baby formula, to the fact that we should be drilling domestically, that it's costing people more money to do things that it did a year or 2 years ago. Yeah, why not focus on that? But no, it's easier to, again, virtue signal because you're so good at it, right? You love to virtue signal. Max, newsflash, no one cares about this farce of a hearing, okay? I like to say something else, but it's, I want to keep it PG here. You and the rest of the Lollipop Guild are the only ones that walk around perpetually erect about this stuff. No one cares. At the end of the day, it's kitchen table issues, Max. Okay? It's meat and potato issues. It's what's being discussed on our front porches, in our backyards during barbecues, in our dining room table, because that's what people care about in an election year. Okay? This whole farce, the only reason you have a hard-on and Bobby Hennelly and Ali Steinberg and Little JJ and others at Insider NJ and the rest of the New Jersey liberal media establishment. There's plenty of Tommy Boy, Tom Moran gets another hard-on about this as well. Uncle Dave, David Cruz with NJTV, NJPBS, NJ Spotlight News, another one that gets a hard-on for this stuff. Guys, even Christine Sloan too. Okay? Like, no one cares. Okay? Our democracy is not in peril. Our democracy is not in danger. We're not approaching fascism. We never lived under fascism. If all of you have grown up here and were raised here, you've never lived under a fascist regime. So just throwing words out just to make it just for hyperbole purposes, yeah, you're not fooling anybody. You might fool some of the idiotic readers that digest this nonsense, but I'm too smart for that. And so is my audience. Okay? Do better. break news once in a while. Like, be like New Jersey Globe. Folks, whenever I need to find out what's breaking in New Jersey politics, I don't read Insider NJ. I read New Jersey Globe because they get breaking news. They break stories almost every hour. What does Insider do? Publish a press release from the next morning? Whenever Max Pizarro gets off his ass at home, whatever he's doing, right? And decides to publish one? Come on. Max, you should know better here. You're in an election year, people don't care about this nonsense. I know you do. But regular New Jerseyans that are struggling, and again, this is how out of touch you are. A guy who's sitting at home, scratching his ass, making six figures, being the editor, right? Maybe occasionally going to an event here and there, right? Maybe doing an interview. Folks, you ever notice Max Pizarro, when he does an interview, it's only the transcripts? And you know why that is? Because if you had to sit through an interview, watching Max Pizarro talk, it would put you to sleep. Okay? It really would. The times I've watched Max Pizarro do interviews, like literally, like I'm like this, and then eventually I'm like, oh, damn, okay, hold on. Where am I? Oh my God, it's like 2 minutes in. Like, that's why you never see Max Pizarro do interviews, right? Number one, who wants to look at that face on camera? And number two, he's going to put you to sleep. So, of course, whenever you see interviews, it's only transcripts. You need to do better, Max. You're a grown-ass man, right? You're like somewhere in your 70s. Come on. I know like, the twilight years are ahead of you, but you need to do better, bro. Come on. You're the editor of a news site. Speaking of doing better, and of course, we go from one virtue signaler and waste of life like Max Pizarro to another waste of life. Yes, little JJ Lasser. And it was funny last week because I remember after I ended the show, people loved the monologue. I think it got like 20-something hundred views, 2,200, 300 views. Pretty good traffic, as always, here on the show. But I remember Friday getting like 10 text messages and someone saying, hey, check out the new column by Jay. And I'm like, why? And I really don't read Insider unless I have to, like unless it comes up on my newsfeed, but my newsfeed's like pretty cluttered. So unless there's something that really stands out, I'm not going to really go looking for stuff on Insider NJ. But of course, little JJ decides to reference the term little bitch. It's apparently a trigger because last week I called Jay Lasser a little bitch. And I'll give you the context why, because he is one, but I'll give you the context here. So he starts this column by saying, the last straight guy who called me, quote, little bitch, provided an invaluable lesson about the treatment of women in general. Jay, I'm curious, what prompted you to write about not liking being called a little bitch? See, Jay, this is the thing. And I don't have a problem saying this on the air because, I'm not untouchable. But what I will say is that I speak truth on this show. Okay? And one of the reasons I really dislike you, it's not because you're gay. So get off that high horse or that victimhood that, people dislike those I'm getting. No, Jay, there's a whole checklist of things about why you're unlikable, about why you're insufferable. And on my checklist, being gay is not one of them. Okay? There's plenty of reasons to dislike you, but being gay, yeah, that's not one of them. Now, maybe other people dislike you because you're gay, and that's their business, and that's wrong because that's bigoted. And believe me, there are a lot more serious things that you do that make you unlikable than what your orientation is. Okay? But what makes Jay insufferable, again, this is really, really funny. So when you're, turning, this is funny. This is both slides. So recently I turned 50. No, you didn't, Jay. You look 70. Look at you. You look more beat up than a catcher's mitt. Give me a break. I have softball gloves that look better conditioned than you. Give me a break. Recently I turned 50. What a bold-faced lie that is. And somewhere along the way, I learned that homophobia is just sexism and really bad drag. And I know that's true because some straight dudes, their homophobia is so basic that it just comes off like sexism. To belittle a gay man, misogyny is a go-to strategy for some and not just the usual knuckle dragglers. It's also a technique favored by the progressive Democrat with feminists in their Twitter profile, or the libertarian type who attended last year's equality ball wearing rainbow cufflinks. Even among our allies, these sexist-tinged homophobic impulses lie just beneath the surface, really to deploy the minute someone feels slighted or put upon. They go from rainbow-clad ally to, quote, little bitch with enough regularity that patterns emerge. Again, Jay, listen, Bobby Hennelly is a little bitch. And to the best of my knowledge, I think Bobby Hennelly is a straight guy. So this idea that you want to sort of peddle victimhood because, Fernando's picking on me and Fernando called me a little bitch because he's a homophobe. I'm not a homophobe. As much as you want to believe that, I'm not a homophobe. But again, the reason that I dislike you as much as I do is because you're insufferable. It's because you're arrogant. is because you're just self-righteous, conceited, and just smug. And that's what makes you unlikable. So everyone at home, by the way, are probably thinking, wait a minute, what did Fernando just say? Did Fernando just, wait a minute, is this the pot calling the kettle black? No, ladies and gentlemen, I don't embody any of the aforementioned attributes. Okay? Because guess what? If I am a little cocky, if I am a little arrogant, if I am a little braggadocious, guess what? See all those awards and degrees behind me? Yeah, it's not bragging if you can back it up. So that doesn't apply to me. But to you, Jay, it is, because you come off as this insufferable leftist, okay? And I've disliked you for a while, okay? But this is where it gets really egregious, because now you're using your platform as a journalist, which you're not. You're a propagandist. That's what you are. Just like Bobby Henley, just like Ali Steinberg, just like Maxi Pizarro, and clearly Christine Sloan this week, another one who's drinking the propaganda Kool-Aid, okay? I've known you're a propagandist for as long as I can remember, okay? I can remember because I have the receipts and I have the screenshots at home here, backed up on a computer, about you being self-righteous, going after the Hudson County executive about 2 years ago. And you wrote some column. I'm not going to read it on the air. I'm not going to give you more play than you deserve. You wrote this garbage, one of many garbage columns, which we all know you specialize in, okay? Talk about the ICE contracts in Hudson County. And I remember that when Hudson County Executive Tom DeGise was under fire by other insufferable leftists and activists, right? Like you, Amy Torres, right? Broken English, Rise Up, Patty Campos Medina, right? With her awful show, Broken English, Rise Up, okay? And you cite them, but more so Amy Torres, because she's the executive director of one of these god-awful, insufferable, illegal coddling groups here in New Jersey. But talking about sort of like, throwing some shade at Tom DeGise. And then when Tom DeGise was catching flack on social media, specifically Twitter, you came to the defense of those that were smearing him, as if some scrawny little bitch living in Cherry Hill in an uppity neighborhood knows anything about Kearney, New Jersey, or the Hudson County. You couldn't find Kearney on a map, Jay, if I threw it on a table for you, okay? Much less finding it or using it on your smartphone, okay? For you to sort of be virtue signaling, right? Where you live in your little uppity town of Cherry Hill, right? Some white little woke, scrawny little, bitch again, right? Talking about, oh, how evil Tom DeGise is. Bro, what do you know anything about ICE contracts? What do you know anything about? Again, you're another one. Do I need to send you a copy of the Constitution where it talks about sovereignty and the preservation of borders? Because that's what the federal government's supposed to be doing, right? Like preserving borders, right? Ensuring that we have sovereignty, because that matters, immigration law. But you don't care. Again, you're there in your little uppity little neighborhood of Cherry Hill, smoking weed at all times of the day. And what was really funny about your column, right, is I see you, this is what's really funny. So you see Jay here in front of the White House, right, carrying a sign, virtue signaling again. Jay, with as much marijuana as you smoke, is it wise to be driving? Like, literally, like, it seems like you're smoking weed at all times of the day, so you're pretty much perpetually impaired. Is it a smart idea to be driving down to Washington, D.C.? I hope not. I hope you're not doing that and putting people's lives in danger on the road, because all you do is smoke weed. That's all you're good for. So again, if you're going to be taking road trips, make sure you're not driving, because again, with the amount of weed that you smoke, I mean, I don't know, man, you're a danger on the road as far as I'm concerned. And I'll go on the record saying that based on my perception, right? But again, folks, it's these sort of columns. Jay, again, I'm not calling you a little bitch because I'm a homophobe or I'm trying to engage in misogyny. No, I'm none of those things. As much as you want to believe it to be. No, that's just not the case. You're a little bitch just like Bobby Henley is, okay? Any guy or girl, mostly men, that want to be as whiners as much as you, that want to virtue signal as much as you do, that want to be so self-righteous as you, yeah, you're a little bitch. Hate to break it to you. I'm the only one in New Jersey that's going to call you out on this. I'm not one of your minions that puts you up on this pedestal throughout New Jersey that look at you and review you like, oh my God, you're like the second coming of journalism. No, you're not, Jay. You want to talk about God's gift to journalism? He's right here. Okay? You're not even on my level as far as I'm concerned. So do us a favor. Stop projecting, because again, I don't got a problem. You want to drop my name, drop my name. At least have the set to say, hey, listen, I don't like certain, heterosexual men, straight guys call me a little bitch. Well, Jay, when you act like one, I have to call you that. So again, you're 70 years old. Well, 70, going on 71 now. Stop lying to people, bro. You're not 50. Come on, look at you. Jesus Christ. You look more beat up than freaking Route 3 up here in Hudson County. Give me a break. So stop lying to people and stop virtue signaling, okay? I'll keep calling you a little bitch because you keep acting like one. You keep writing like one. Same as Bobby Henley. He's a little bitch too, okay? I don't call Maxie a little bitch. Well, he could be. He's a tall bitch. But, you know, it's the same premise. Do better, guys. Do better. And speaking of doing better, obviously, who leads the way? Who's leading the lollipop? Yes, it's everyone's boss at Insider NJ. It's Pete O'Nelia. Again, who's more interested in making money and maybe not having a little more, I don't know, maybe not delegating better and making sure that the rest of the Lollipop Guild isn't peddling the propaganda that we're seeing, whether it's about January 6th or whatever. This is what's really funny to me, folks, because I know Pete personally. Okay, this is a guy who, again, works at home in Hawthorne, great town, whatever, has the audacity to run to be the chairman of the Hawthorne Democratic Committee and still be the chairman, the general manager of a news site. How no one's called that out as a conflict of interest is beyond me. But what makes Pete even more insufferable is the idea of trying to change Hawthorne. From what, Pete? What, 1 month out of the year isn't enough for you? For Pride Month, you got to make it all months of the year? We have to celebrate gay people every single day of the year in Hawthorne, New Jersey, or the rest of the pronoun brigade or the alphabet army? I mean, is that the virtue signaling you want to come across as? That's what you do. It's all over your social media. But what makes your job even more egregious is the fact that you don't care. And I get it. Maybe money does it to people. When you're sitting at home, scratching your ass, making high six figures, and still have the audacity to say, oh my God, things aren't as what they should be in the town of Hawthorne. Why? Like, you're living a pretty comfortable life, and you're still bitching and moaning, and you're trying to change a town that's been governed pretty efficiently for as long as I can remember. That's not good enough for you. You'd rather virtue signal and do it under the guise as the chairman of the Democratic Party in Hawthorne, but then run a news site and still claim it to be non-biased. You're not fooling anyone, Pete. And I get it. You make money from Mike and Ryan Graham and the Graham family, but bro, have some foresight, have some self-awareness here. You're coming across as extremely disingenuous and extremely hypocritical. But you know what? I guess that's what money does to people when you make enough of it. It's a shame, though, Pete. You should know better, man. You shouldn't let money do this to you, but it seems like it has. Because you're not really delegating the way you should and putting the rest of the Lollipop Guild in check. Again, folks, when we talk about bad journalism and the worst journalists of the week, it seems like every single week I get a major amount of people to pick from when it comes to Insider NJ. You should all know better, man. You're all people in your 70s, early 90s, like Alan Steinberg, whatever. You should know better, guys. Again, if you're trying to set an example of what journalists should be, you're not doing it. You want to know who is? That's right, yours truly. I don't mean to be braggadocious. I'm just being factual. And again, since we're all always harping on January 6th over at Insider NJ, let me remind everybody that I, too, remember January 6th. I remember how great gasoline was and how cheap it was to fill up my tank and where I didn't care about all this virtue signaling. Because it's not important in an election year when people are struggling to feed their families, to take trips down the shore or out of state. They can't. They have to budget more than ever because of reckless and irresponsible policies coming out of the White House. But you won't write about that. You'll write about how important pronouns are and how democracy is so fragile right now. It's not. Stop with your nonsense. Give me a break. You're grown-ass men and women having tantrums like children. You should know better. It seems like I'm the only adult in the room, and it seems like I'm going to be the only adult in the room for the foreseeable future. Shame on you, Insider NJ. You should know better. But then again, doing so would require that pesky four-syllable word, integrity. We all know that none of you little bitches at Insider NJ have that integrity. Look it up and start practicing it, because I sure do. And that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank Butler Mayor Ryan Martinez for coming on the program today. Great interview, great breakdown of this political climate and much more. You can check out the episode in its entirety at the Jersey First TV YouTube page and, of course, on Facebook Live via StreamYard. And certainly, ladies and gentlemen, always check it out on the Instagram page for Jersey First TV. And, of course, check it out also on their Twitter. Follow them. Follow yours truly on Instagram and Twitter at NoFilter Uribe. That's at NoFilter, Uribe. And, of course, make sure you like Real Talk with Fernando Uribe on Facebook, as well as also liking Jersey First TV on Facebook as well. Once again, folks, for all of you at home This show would not be the success that it is with thousands and thousands of views every single week. It would not be possible without you, my loyal viewing audience. So I love you all. God bless you all. I'll see you next week here, folks, at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, as Paul Mulsheim from the Star-Ledger, fellow journalist, will join me. We'll have a lot to discuss. Pretty good debate, I'm sure, will be coming our way next Monday Night Live, once again at 6 p.m. Eastern Time via Facebook Live on StreamYard, and also on Jersey First TV via YouTube. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always real talk right here with Jersey First TV. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist. Of course, folks, I'm running out of awards. You see what I'm saying? Like behind me, I might have to do like an extension of my house. That's how many awards I'm getting. But again, folks, it's not being braggadocious if you can back it up. And certainly the top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit Online magazine for 2020, 2021, and now in 2022. And of course, the Garden State's most beloved and factually accurate political commentator. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe, saying so long, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great end to your July. We'll see you next week here as we start the month of August. The dog days of summer continue, folks. Let's go Yankees. And as always, thank you so much for watching.